Before we do the Mythos phase for the next round, a couple of corrections. Daisy had played this Fearless on one of her skill tests and was successful and should have healed one of her horror because of that. So this 3 should actually be 2. Also, I missed a negative effect that would cause me damage. At one time, Skids had the Icy Ghoul and Daisy had the Ravenous Ghoul, and Skids used one of his actions to engage the Ravenous Ghoul to bring it to his threat area, and doing so would have given the Icy Ghoul an attack of opportunity, because I wasn't doing one of the allowed actions for when an enemy is in front of you, which is fight, evade, parlor, or resign. So since I was doing an engagement action, this Icy Ghoul would have got an attack of opportunity and inflicted 2 wounds and 1 madness on Skids. So I'll add those on now so the total is correct. So now he has 6 wounds and 4 total madness. With those corrections made, we can now start the Mythos phase by placing a Doom on the current agenda, placing us at 3 total. Next, each investigator will draw a card, beginning with Skids. Oh, we've seen this one already. He gets another Dissonant Voices. That's unfortunate. So until the end of this round, he cannot play assets or events. Daisy will get Rotting Remains. Test willpower 3. For each point you fail, take 1 horror. Daisy has a willpower of 3, going against a test of 3, and gets a 0. That works out great. She's successful and will not take any horror. Great. That wasn't too bad. We do have Skids unable to play assets or events, but he can still use skills if he needs to. We'll have Daisy go first this time. And for her first action, I'll have her spend 2 resources to bring the Encyclopedia into play. And remember, we exhaust the Encyclopedia, and an investigator at our location will get +2 to a skill of our choice until the end of the phase. Now she has something in each hand and can't carry anything else, no other assets, unless she discards 1. Next action for Daisy will be, we'll use her medical text action to try and heal some of these wounds on Skids, because he's at 6 and he only has 8 total that he can take. So we're going against her intellect of 5, a test of 2, -2. That'll be successful, and that will heal 1 wound that Skids had. And for her third action, I'll have her draw a card, and she'll get a magnifying glass, +1 intellect while investigating. We won't need that anymore. Not that I think. But I will have Daisy use her extra ability to use a tome and do the medical texts again for Skids. And we got the skull. There are no ghoul enemies here, so that is also successful. removing another wound from Skids. Skids will now go, but since he cannot play assets or events, we'll just have him prep by have him draw a card and get Backstab. This attack uses agility instead of combat, and this attack will deal +2 damage. Well, Skids has an agility of 4 and a combat of 3, so that could come in handy. That's going to put him at 8 cards. I'll have him acquire a resource for a second action. And for his third action, I can't bring any of this stuff into play. No events, no assets. I don't need to worry about clues. I'll just have another asset. Another resource available. That way he has 6. And that will end Skid's turn, and this was a very quick round. We will skip the enemy phase. There are none in play. Go into Upkeep. Each player will draw a card. Daisy gets Manual Dexterity. That is a skill. Max 1 committed per skill test. If this test is successful, draw a card. That'll be good for evading. And Skids draws Evidence. Fast. Play after you defeat an enemy. Discover a clue at your location. All our clue gathering has already been completed. And each player will also get a resource as part of the upkeep. So Skids is doing pretty good in the resource department. He has 7. He does have 8 cards, so we need to get rid of 1. Let's take a look at what we want to discard. We can use that. I want to keep that. I want to keep that. Flashlight seems to be the best choice. We will get rid of the flashlight to discard down to 8. We will place another Doom on the agenda. We're now at 4, so now we're getting close to that progressing, so we might want to progress our act. But first, we have to draw our cards. Daisy will go first and get Grasping Hands. She must do an agility test of 3, and for each point she fails, she'll take 8 damage. She can only take up to 5 wounds, and she already has 2, and she could fail enough. No, she couldn't fail enough to kill her because I could always place 1 on the research librarian, so I'll take my chances. So we got a test of 3, and she has an agility of 2. Oh! And we automatically fail. And that hurts, because when you have an automatic failure, your skill total is considered 0. So she has to take 3 wounds, one of which we'll place on the research librarian, which will discard him, and 2 on her, which will put her back up to 4, and only 1 away. Bad choice on my part. Next we have Skids O'Toole, who will get the Obscuring Fog. Attached to your location, limit 1 per location. Attached location gets +2 Shroud. And if we investigate successfully, this would get discarded. So the cellar is cold and foggy. So both investigators are here. Luckily we don't have to do any more clues there, so that does not hurt us too much. That'll end our Mythos phase. We'll start with Daisy. And for her first action, we'll move her to the hallway, because we need to be in the hallway to use our clues to advance the act. For her first action, we will try to heal her. with her medical texts. And that will give us a -2, taking her 5 down to a 3, which is still enough. There's no ghoul enemy here that we have to worry about. So that heals her for 1. And I'm going to do it again. A -1 means we are successful again. So Daisy's managed to heal herself. And for her additional special action that she can do with tomes, we'll try it one more time. See if we can get her down to 1. There's no ghouls here, so we don't have to worry about that. And she's down to just 1 wound now. That will end her turn. Then we'll have Skids for his first action also move to the hallway. I don't know why I'm flipping him over already. It's only 1 action. And I think I'm going to go for it now. We're both in the hallway. We have another player window available after Skids' first action. We will spend our 6 clues in the hallway and advance the act. Using the barrel from the attic, you carry ice and snow from the cellar and hurl it at the barrier. The barrier sparks and shudders as it consumes the ice, then hisses and fades out of existence. The barrier blocking passage into the parlor has vanished. Reveal the parlor. Put the set-aside Lita Chandler, or Chantler, into play in the parlor. Spawn the set-aside Ghoul Priest in the hallway. A woman with a torch stands in your parlor, a glimmer of hatred in her eyes. "What have you done to my barrier?" she screams, furious. Before you can answer, a ghastly wail sounds behind you, and a creature wearing robes and a deer skull mask tears through the wall, advancing towards you. Objective: if the Ghoul Priest is defeated, advance. Here's Lita. And we can take control over her. And when we do control her, each investigator at the location will get an additional combat. And then when an investigator at our location successfully attacks a monster enemy, that investigator deals +1 damage. And she also has a good amount of health and mental ability to help us out at the same time. So she will appear in the parlor, which is where she was doing her work before we interrupted. As you could see, she was taking care of business pretty good in there before we interrupted. And when in the parlor, you can actually resign, which is to leave the game. This allows investigators to leave the game before being wounded to death or being driven insane. That way, in the campaign mode, you're not having lasting effects that you carry over to the next part. And here's where we can try and take control of Lita to do the parlay test against our intellect of 4. And if you succeed, we can take control of her. So the parlor is now open, the barrier is down, Lita is inside, and we have a problem in the hallway. And our new problem is the Ghoul Priest. You can see he's got pretty robust stats. He's hard to escape from, he's got a high combat value, and his health is that times our number of investigators. So we have to do 10 wounds to take this Ghoul Priest out, and that's how we're going to advance the act, is by taking him out. He's going to go after the investigator with the highest combat at the location. And he's got the hunter ability, which means he can follow us around. And the retaliate ability, which I forget right now, but let me look that up real quick. And also does 2 wounds and 2 mental damage with each attack. Since the Ghoul Priest is coming into play in the hallway, Skids has the highest combat ability. The Ghoul Priest comes in ready, and we'll go to Skids' threat area. Just move this fog over just to get it out of the way. And the retaliate ability means if we're doing an attack on the Ghoul Priest and we are unsuccessful, the Ghoul Priest will do its damage, the 2 health and the 2 mental damage, to the investigator attacking it, whether or not it is engaged with that investigator or not. Skid still has 2 actions remaining. For the first one, I'm going to have him spend 3 for the event Backstab. And this attack will use agility instead of combat, and this attack will deal +2 damage. It's going to cost us 3 of his resources to put that into action. And I'm going to have Daisy commit manual dexterity to give him 2 more agility on this test. His agility is 4, so that's going to take him up to 6. The priest has a ability of 4 against our 6, and perfect. -1 only takes us down to 5, and we are successful. We do the 1 damage, and this attack will do +2 damage because of our backstab, and we'll get a nice shot of 3 damage in right away on the Ghoul Priest. And Skids has 1 more action he can take. I'll have Skids attack with his machete using his fight ability, and we will commit Hard Knocks to get 1 more combat. That'll take him from a 3 to a 4 with that, and the machete gives me +1 for a total of 5. We have an ability of 5 against the Ghoul's 4. And we have a Skull. Minus the number of Ghoul enemies, which is 1 only, taking our 5 down to a 4, and we are successful. We're going to do an additional damage because of the machete, giving us +1 since it's the only enemy we're engaged with, and we're halfway to taking this Ghoul Priest out. That will end Skid's turn. I don't really want to spend any resources to get an additional action with him. And that will take us into the enemy phase, and this Ghoul Priest is going to do its attack, but I'm going to spend 1 resource to play this event, which is Dodge, and it's a fast card, so it doesn't require an action. Play when an enemy attacks an investigator location, cancel that attack. So Skids will not take any damage. And when an attack is cancelled like that, the enemy is considered to have taken the action still and would be exhausted after taking the action. The Upkeep Phase brings the Ghoul back around. Both of our cards are flipped, and we will draw a card. And she has drawn Ward of Protection. Fast. Play when you draw a non-weakness treachery card. Cancel that card's revelation effect and take a horror. I have that in my hand in case I need it. That's good timing. First aid. Spend 1 of the uses, heal 1 damage or horror from an investigator. Good. Definitely need that. Add a resource to each investigator, and that'll take us into our next Mythos phase. We will add another Doom, taking us up to 5. Daisy went first, so she will draw the first card and get Rotting Remains. Willpower test of 3. She has a willpower of 3, and she has plenty of room to take horror, so I'm not worried about that. Her willpower of 3 and -2 takes us down to 1, which means she will suffer 2 horror, bringing her up to 4 total currently. Skids gets to draw a card, and it is another monster. That's unfortunate. It's a flesh eater. Easy to evade though. That's a nasty looking thing. 1 wound, 2 horror. Oh good, it spawns in the attic. I almost missed that. And it does not hunt, so it's going to stay there. So that's not so bad after all. So in the attic is our flesh eater. Great, that worked out pretty good. First I'll have Daisy go, and I will have her exhaust the encyclopedia and give an investigator at my location +2 to a skill of my choice, and I am going to give him +2 to his agility, which is already 4, because I'm going to want to try and evade this priest so we can exhaust him when it's Skid's turn. So for first action I will do that. For her second action I'm going to move her to the parlor, which is a connected area to the hallway. For her third action, or her second, depending if I count the encyclopedia as her additional ability. But for this action I'm going to try the parlay test of my intellect. It's a test level 4 to try and take control of Lita Chandler. I have an ability of 5 on my intellect. I'm also going to commit working a hunch to get 2 more to bring myself up to 7, to give myself the best chance possible of succeeding. We're going up against a 7. Oh no, we're going up against a 4 with a 7. Oh, and we got the -2. And if there's a ghoul here, and there is not at this location. So that takes me down to a 5. That is enough. And a quick reminder, each investigator here gets an additional combat. And when we make a successful attack on a monster, we get to do +1 damage. So Daisy now takes control of Lita. Put her over here. And I will count that encyclopedia as that special ability, as the additional action, which will give Daisy 1 more, and we'll grab another resource just in case we need it. That will end Daisy's turn, taking us to Skids, and we need to escape this ghoul priest so we can come to the parlor also and gain those advantages that Lita Chandler gives us. Skid's agility is still a 6 thanks to the encyclopedia used by Daisy Walker. So his 6 is going against a 4. -1. Perfect. That will work. That means we're successful in evading the ghoul priest, which will exhaust it and put it at the hallway. And for his second action, we will move down here into the parlor with Daisy and Lita. For my third action, I'm going to spend the 2 to bring my first aid asset into play. And that We'll put 3 resources on it, or what they call supplies in this case. And I will spend 2 resources to get an additional action this turn. And for that additional action, I will spend one of these supplies and heal one of my sanity. That'll end Skid's turn. Move us to the enemy phase. This flesh eater does not hunt and will stay in the attic. The ghoul priest is still exhausted, which will take us into the upkeep phase. Then these things will get reset. So he is available now, but still in the hallway. Now we're much better equipped and more ready for when that thing comes to us. Next we have our players each draw a card. Daisy has hyper awareness. I can use resources to get additional agility or intellect for a skill test. And Skids draws sneak attack. Deal 2 damage to an exhausted enemy at your location. Oh, that would have been handy just a few steps ago. That would have been nice to throw another 2 damage on that priest. And we'll add a resource to each player and move into our next Mythos phase. Mythos phase will add another doom. We're at 6, 1 more, and we will advance that agenda. Hopefully we won't have to. And then we will draw a card now. Oh, I forgot to ready the encyclopedia again. Starting with Daisy. Daisy and these grasping hands. They always seem to be coming after her. She needs to do an agility test of 3. She has an agility of 2. I'll use her... No, I'll hold on to it. She has an agility of 2. Yeah. She can take a little bit of damage because Lita has some ability there. And we got... Oh! We got the Elder Sign. Nice. And with Daisy, that is a 0. And if we succeed, we draw 1 card, so we didn't succeed, but we only took 1 wound, and we'll put it on Lita and not worry about it. Now we'll draw a card for Skids, and he will get a swarm of rats. Now the monsters are piling on, but they only have 1 health and a combat of 1. They're more annoying than anything else. That'll go into Skid's threat area and take us into our investigator phase, or investigation phase, that is. I will have Daisy go first, and I will have her engage these rats and move them over to her threat area, and I will attack them. She has a combat of 2, but Lita will give her a +1 for a total of 3. And the hooded figure. It's a -1, so that works out great. All we needed was 1 damage. I'll take care of these darn rats. For her additional action she's allowed to take, we'll exhaust the encyclopedia and give +2 combat to Skids O'Toole. And for her final action, I will move her from the parlor to the hallway, which will cause the ghoul priest to engage with her. Oop, there we go. And that will end Daisy's turn. Next I will move Skids from the parlor to the hallway also. And engage the Ghoul Priest away from Daisy. And for his third action, I will attack. Lita is here with us, so I'm going to get a +1 to my combat that goes from a 3 to a 4. I'm going to use the fight action on my machete, and that's the only enemy that I'm engaged with. So that will take it up to a 5. I will commit this card, Sneak Attack, to give me an additional fight or combat value. That will take me up to a 6. And I'll stop there. So it's 6 against 4. 6 against 4. -2 brings us down to 4, and we are successful with that attack. That was close, but we're successful. So he's going to do 1 damage, +1 for the machete, +1 for Lita, because that does have the monster keyword on it. So that's 3 more damage to the Ghoul Priest, putting it at 8. That will be Skid's final action this turn. The enemy phase begins. The Ghoul Priest will attack Skids and do 2 health and 1 sanity. Or I'm sorry, 2 sanity and 2 health. I'm going to put 1 wound on the guard dog, 1 on Skids, and the 2 horror damage to his sanity. We'll put him at 5. He's right at the threshold. He can only take 6. That wound to the guard dog will cause another wound on the Ghoul Priest, putting it at 9. It's only 1 away from us taking it out. We're almost there. And the Flesh Eater in the attic will stay where it's at, none on the carcass. We will go into the Upkeep Phase. Both of our players in the hallway still. Dr. Milan Christopher. He's an ally. +1 intellect. After successfully investigating, gain a resource. Handy early on. Don't really need him right now. But at least it's not a weakness. Cat Burglar. +1 to agility. Ooh, that's nice to have. Disengage from an enemy engaged with you and move to a connecting location. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. That would have been useful earlier also. Not so much now. Gain our resource and go into our next Mythos phase. And we're going to add our 7th Doom, which means we will now advance the agenda. A feral beast, roughly humanoid, with a canine cast and hooves for feet, tears through the ground in front of you. Below the floor, you can see vast tunnels beneath your house. Fiendish howling echoes from deep within the underground caverns. Shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a ghoul enemy is discarded. The lead investigator draws that enemy. And that will be Daisy that's going to get that ghoul. They're getting out! You hear a crazed howl outside, and suddenly all the creatures turn their attention to that sound. They rush to escape the house, breaking down doors and clawing at everything in their way. Forced. At the end of the enemy phase, each unengaged ghoul enemy moves one location towards the parlor. Forced. At the end of the round, place one doom on this agenda for each ghoul enemy in the hallway or parlor. A ghoul minion. That's what Daisy ended up with after we shuffled the encounter discard pile back into the deck. So this will be now in Daisy's threat area. Finish up the Mythos Phase, and Daisy ended up with Dissonant Voices. No assets or events for Daisy until the end of the round. And the Grasping Hands are coming after Skids this time. They used to like Daisy, but now they're going after Skids. He has an agility of 4. And he is going against a test of 3. Oof. That's going to take us down to 1. So we're going to fail by 2 and have to take 2 wounds, which sucks, because that will put him at 7. And only 1 away from dying himself. We barely survived the Mythos Phase. It's time for the Investigation Phase, and we're going to start with Skids. And we're going to attack the Ghoul Priest right away and try and end this right now. We will use the Fight ability on the machete to get +1 to my combat, taking my 3 to a 4. Lita is here with us, which gives us a 5. And Daisy will commit this wild card symbol to make it another 1 higher. So he goes from a 3 to a 4 to a 5 to a 6. 6 against 4. This would be it. And yes, a -1 takes us down to a 5. That is enough. We would have done 3 damage, which is more than enough to take out this Ghoul Priest and advance the act. When the robed creature falls, the fiendish swarm burrows back into the ground, and the chaos of the house quiets. But the stranger in your parlor doesn't seem relieved. You broke my seal that was set to trap the ghouls within. She raises her torch. Now you must take more direct measures to burn this hell pit to the ground. The lead investigator must decide and choose one. Either it was never much of a home, burn it down. Or this hell pit is my home. No way are we burning it. The choice presented on the back of the final act card is something you would have to deal with in the campaign mode, and the decision you make there was a code like R1 or R2, and that's something you look up in the campaign guide to see what your decision does and what the outcome of it is. I'm not going to spoil that for you. That'll be for you to find out when you play the campaign mode. It's not important in this one-off adventure, but we were successful. Barely. Skids was 1 away in both his wounds and his horror. Daisy flirted with wounds a lot of the time, was never in danger for horror, but we managed to pull it out and get the victory here. Thank you for joining me for another series of playthrough videos. This time it was Arkham Horror, the card game from Fantasy Flight Games. And it feels kind of weird. Doesn't feel appropriate that I'm wearing it's not really dark or brooding or horror related. It's a cat eating ramen. I should probably dress appropriately when talking about a horror game. Give me just a moment. Thank you for joining me for Arkham Horror, the card game. Now I'm sufficiently dark and brooding, even though the best I could do was a compression shirt because all of my dark, evil clothes were in the laundry. That silliness being said, the game was really fun, and I've already looked at the expansions and all the material that's going to be coming out for the game. I really enjoy the Lovecraftian world as a theme for games, and at this point Fantasy Flight should probably just take my bank's routing number and deduct the money straight from my account as pre-orders and to just ship the product to me as soon as the game comes out. But overall, I really enjoyed playing the game. I'm going to look forward to going through the campaign several times, using the different characters, and with the expansions coming out, more options, more scenarios, more characters, more items, more everything, as Fantasy Flight always seems to do and does very well. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.